The phenomenon of Elon Musk and his latest venture, this wholesale assault on the cushy sinecures of government bureaucrats, is interesting because in so many ways I agree with Musk. I don't normally agree with Musk, as you know. The man who gave us Teslas that spontaneously combust, rockets that sometimes explode in the name of progress, and a social media site that now resembles the Wild West, explosions everywhere, has turned his attention to one of the great immovable objects of modern civilization, bureaucracy. And let's be honest, it's a long overdue battle. And this week, Musk, as a self-appointed czar of America's Department of Efficiency, or DODGE, because he's constitutionally incapable of being serious, has demanded that every US federal employee explain what they've been doing in the past week. Failure to respond, consider yourself resigned. The unions are livid, the bureaucrats are aghast, but somewhere in the dark corners of Whitehall, thousands of NHS managers who earn six-figure salaries for holding meetings after meetings are quietly soiling themselves in existential dread, I have no doubt, because what happens in the US yesterday will happen in the UK tomorrow. Let's be clear. Nurse isn't targeting the nurses, the first responders, or even the lowly clerks doing actual work. No, his sights are set firmly on the middle managers, the paper pushers, the interminable ranks of assistant deputy undersecretaries for policy coordination, whose job descriptions alone could be replaced by the phrase attends meetings, and whose primary professional skill is surviving government reshuffles. So the real scandal is not that Musk has asked government workers to prove that they're actually working. It's that such an exercise is seen as such a radical imposition. And the UK should take note, or rather the pen pushers should take note. If there's one nation on earth where the bureaucratic class has reached the apotheosis of self-perpetuating inertia, it is Britain. And the apotheosis of the flowering of this apotheosis is in the NHS England. The light of Mount Tabor is corrupted and mirrored in NHS England, that alone employs more administrators than the Canadian military employs soldiers. Hospitals lack nurses, but they have entire departments attended to wellness strategies and diversity assessments. This must be wrong. There are senior NHS officers on £200,000 salaries whose sole remit is to measure staff morale, which ironically is at an all-time low. Imagine if they too had to provide 5 bullet points of what they had actually achieved in a given week. Chaos would ensue. Of course, there is a counter-argument. There are real fears that Musk's fork-in-the-road style of management, adopted wholesale from his brutal Twitter purge, will gut vital institutions. One cannot help but notice that the US government's cybersecurity team is now frantically rehiring after Musk and his cronies fired them en masse. Likewise, when he took over Twitter, he cut 80% of the workforce overnight, only to realize later that some of them were actually doing useful things, like keeping the site from collapsing. One wonders what would happen if Musk turned his gaze to the British civil service. HMRC, notorious for leaving taxpayers on hold for 6 hours, might be reduced to an answering machine. Could it be any worse? The Department for Education could be cut down to a single overworked intern sending out Ofsted reports by carrier pigeon, the night duty man. And as for the post office, well, if the past 2 decades of scandal have taught us anything, it's that they might be improved by firing absolutely everybody. Musk's great bureaucratic cull is a uniquely American spectacle, but let's not pretend that Britain won't be tempted to follow. Governments of every stripe have long lamented the bloat of public administration, yet none have managed to do anything about it. But what if a British government actually tried? Imagine the horror in the corridors. There's a little spoonerism for you. The corridors of Corra. Imagine the horror in the corridors of NHS England, this huge building in the middle of London, if civil servants were asked, dare I say it, to account for their own existence. Imagine the sheer panic at Ofcom, or the BBC, or the Department for Levelling Up if civil servants had to summarise their achievements in 5 bullet points each week. Would they just submit the same list on repeat? In the end, Musk's swoop on the US federal workforce must be nothing more than a vanity project, or it must be a serious option. It's one or the other. Is it vanity, or is it actual policy and practice? Is it simply another in his long list of power plays? But the sheer terror that it's instilled in bureaucratic circles is telling, because deep down we all know the truth. The people who are sweating the most are probably the ones who shouldn't be there in the first place. So Britain, particularly Britain's bureaucrats, should take note. The Musk method may be crude. We may disapprove of him and of his methods. He may be bombastic. He may be wrong. He may be legally dubious. But perhaps a little fear in the hearts of the bureaucratic class wouldn't be such a bad thing. Perhaps it would lever them into actually doing their job. Perhaps we would see the Home Office processing some of the backlog of asylum applications, getting people out of the hotels, getting people into a job, getting people paying tax, getting people contributing to our society, rather than languishing indolently, resenting the inertia that is Britain.